The New Orleans Saints coaching search just took a wild turn. This is Saturday morning inspection. These two hombres are close to the camera. Goodness, we are up. I feel like I'm in a handicap match. I feel like this is like WWF 2-on-1 type situation here. Call me Lily Phillips, two guys right in my face. All right, enough of that. Jesus, it's a family channel. Let's go ahead and listen to what these hombres have to say. The New Orleans Saints coaching search will certainly be heating up in about 24 hours whenever the Buccaneers Saints game is over. So this is probably going to be a bulk of what we're talking about until we do find our new head coach, because you can't do anything else without a head coach. So can't draft players, can't do any of that stuff until you know your system, your scheme, and who is leading your franchise. And man, do we need it. So let's go ahead and take a little sneak peek.
Let's talk about the New Orleans Saints up and down season for the Saints. Mainly a lot of injuries on this Saints roster. Coaching struggles as well. Dennis Allen's fired. Pete Carmichael's fired. A lot of change going on this Saints roster, but I think change for the better. The new guy on the block, who's going to be the new coach for this Saints team, that is something that is very important going forward. And when I say we have a huge update, a very interesting update for this Saints team, I am not lying. You're going to want to hear this one. But first, I'm Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection.
I'm tuned in. Oh, they tricked me. I got hit with an intro video. Damn it. I got to do it.
All right, Nick, everybody, hold on to your butts. Put your seatbelts on, strap in for
I'm
this
ready.
one, because this is
go.
a absolutely massive, blast from the past. One that was unexpected, but it makes a whole lot of sense. The next potential Saints head coaching option by a couple of really valid sources. They're saying this is a rumor flying around out there. None other than Jon Gruden. How about that? I think is really interesting here.
Yeah, Gruden is an obvious narrative, or it's an obvious Loomis knows him, no doubt. He, by all accounts, he was basically offered the offensive coordinator job last season. He didn't take it. The Saints went with Kubiak. He was brought in when Carr signed with the Saints. Gruden was brought in as counsel to help Carr kind of ease into everything. When Jon Gruden started his podcast, the first guest was Derek Carr. It is well known that Gruden and Carr love each other. Carr, in so many interviews, he talks about Jon Gruden. Jake Haener, in interviews, has talked about how important Jon Gruden was to him. And, so here's the deal with Gruden. I think Gruden has a lot to offer a team, and I think he does make some sense for the Saints. He is a guy who can certainly build an identity. He understands how an NFL team should operate. He understands how to build, I don't want to say culture. Culture is the overplayed word, but he understands how to build something, build a foundation. The Saints really need that foundation. They just need, at this point, they need a logistical guy who can come in and be a head coach. They need another Sean Payton type who's going to be able to structure and organize what they are doing before we even get into the X's and O's. Darren Rizzi, the best thing Rizzi did compared to Dennis Allen was he brought this structure to practice, to game day. And we heard about how they implemented the 2-hour warm-up period, and the soft tissue injuries went down and all that stuff. But the Saints have just been missing that. They've been missing this identity and who they are. Now, my concern with Gruden is Carr. Jon Gruden is not going to take this job if it means firing Derek Carr, or if it means releasing Derek Carr. I worry that because of the Raider connections with Carr and Allen and whatever else, I feel like the fan base may have a negative kind of taste in their mouth if they do get Gruden, even though I don't think it's the worst hire. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. If you told me we'd hire Gruden, then that's better than Mike McCarthy. That's better than Matt Nagy. That's better than a lot of the other people who are being floated around. A lot of the other names, the Ron Riveras of the world, these other retreads.
Tom Pelissero, who very reputable source, great guy as far as just telling you how it is, doesn't try to do a lot of things for clicks, as we like to say. So I think this is a really good source here. Tom Pelissero sat down with Peter Schrager on Good Morning Football to dish out what he's hearing on upcoming NFL head coaching cycle. When Pelissero was asked to highlight a dark horse he's considered being considered by teams, but not often discussed in the media, he suggested someone who has a couple of New Orleans Saints connection. He said, keep an eye on Jon Gruden, Pelissero said. Gruden briefly reunited with the Derek Carr at the 2023 organized team activities and minicamp practices to help the veteran quarterback pick up Pete Carmichael's playbook in the first offseason with the Saints. So obviously that is tying him to the Saints, and he's saying that this could be a guy to be the next head coach of the Saints. Nick, curious what you think about all of this, but before we get to you, Saints fans, in the comment section below, I bet you didn't have this one on your bingo board to start the season.
I think Gruden, I don't think it's as much of a dark horse as people are laying it out to be. I mean, last season, we did plenty of videos about Gruden as the offensive coordinator, as the head coach. Like, as long as Carr is here, it kind of makes sense. And, Gruden, the whole Mickey Loomis, like, he wants to hire somebody he knows. Like, the fact that Gruden was already brought in as a consultant, I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's far-fetched. I think right now, if I had to, rank 5 or whatever coaching candidates that are the most possible, I think Gruden would be in that top 5.
The next head coach of the Saints being Jon Gruden, but tell us how you feel about it. Let us, let's say in an imaginary world, he does get hired. How do you grade this one? Let us know in the comment section below. Is it a knockout of the park? Is it an A? Do you not know how to feel? Is it a mediocre C, or is this something you don't even want to touch with a 10-foot pole? Is it an F? Let us know your thoughts
I would say it's
the
a B.
comment section below. But
if that is
Nick,
how it ends up
what do you
being, I would say
think
it's a
about
B.
all of this for the Saints?
Flat B.
When I first heard the news, I was like, really? But when you think about it, it does kind of make a lot of sense, because this is a team in the New Orleans Saints that I felt 15 years, I think it was like 12, 13, they were one of the most must-watch TV. Sean Payton, Drew Brees, they were one of the marquee franchises in the entire NFL. They just were, obviously winning playoff games, going to and winning a Super Bowl, high-flying offense, aggressive defense. They were one of the best teams year in and year out. Even those years where they're going like 8-8 or 7-9, I think 3 years in a row, they had years like that. They still were must-watch TV because they were put up 35, 38 points. Brees was throwing for 5,000 yards. They were incredible with that offense.
True.
The past couple of years, they've become the worst kind of mediocre. They've become kind of boring, right? In the first two games of the season, it kind of felt like when they dropped 40 burgers on Carolina and Dallas, that people were like, okay, this is the exciting
God, what a time to be alive that was.
This is the team we've been waiting to see. And then it kind of fizzled out, partly due to injuries, partly due to some coaching issues. And I think right now the New Orleans Saints, they need something to get some spark back. They need something to get some energy in the franchise, get people wanting to be involved with this franchise and this team again. Because if you just look on paper, it's not a great scenario. According to overthecap.com, the New Orleans Saints currently...
Now, this hombre right here is right about that. Like, Gruden, if nothing else, he is absolutely a splashy name. I mean, especially now that he's with Barstool, he's kind of had in the last 6 months, he's kind of had a renaissance of being attached to Barstool and being on all these podcasts and all these clips. And I mean, I know people who probably have never seen a Jon Gruden video or clip before in their life, and all of a sudden they're sending me a ton of Jon Gruden stuff because he's everywhere. So he is certainly a pseudo celebrity hire. Like, this would absolutely make headlines. Some maybe not positive, but it would absolutely be a splashy hire. Certainly more splashy than, Aaron Glenn, or, like I said before, Mike McCarthy or Ron Rivera, or retreads like that. Like, this would be a very splashy hire.
Only sit with negative $65 million in cap space heading into 2025. They got big decisions to make with guys like Derek Carr and Cameron Jordan, of course. There's a way they can maneuver out of that salary cap hole, but however they do it, it ain't going to be pretty. They're going to have to let a lot of good players go. They're going to have to rely on a lot of young guys. It's going to be kind of rough over the next couple years, at least on paper, for the New Orleans Saints. They need kind of a big name marquee guy to come in and kind of give this thing just a bolt of energy, just a boost. And look, if there's one thing Gruden can do, it's this, right? He revitalizes franchises and just gives them a spark. He did that with the Raiders, turned the Raiders into the most successful the Raiders ever were the first time. And
I mean, that is what you're going to ask whoever the head coach is. It's like, look, you kind of have to lead this rebuild. You kind of have to lead this revitalization of the franchise. You do have to do that. So if that's something that Gruden is interested in, time will tell. What this job is not is for Gruden to come in here and hang out with Derek Carr for 2 years and try and win games. Like, the Saints aren't there. The Saints are not. They're not in a win now. They're not in the win next year. They're not in a win in 2 years kind of mode. They need somebody to rebuild this thing culturally, identity, all that stuff. They need someone to come in and do that, along with Mickey Loomis and the draft picks and trades and free agency and getting rid of some veterans and so that's what the job entails. Gruden would have to be willing to do that. And this guy, I mean, we got to get some furniture in this room. This is an unbelievable 4 walls I'm looking at here. This is pretty close to an insane asylum. I mean, my man, get some furniture, get something.
In like 30 years, the second time, his time there obviously got cut short. Even when he went to the Buccaneers, his first year there, just shot in the arm they needed. They went all the way to win the Super Bowl. So you talk about a guy that can give some energy. Gruden can do that in spades. He's also obviously a very smart offensive mind, one of the more underrated offensive minds in terms of the coaching world right now. I think it would be a good hire. I'm not surprised that a smart guy, well-connected guy like Pelissero thinks it's a good chance of happening. I think the Saints could do a lot worse, and honestly, would do real wonders to bring a lot of good momentum back to this franchise.
Yeah, and again, when you start connecting the dots, I think this is something that's not too far off. I think when we saw, him show up at the 2023 season in OTAs, in minicamp to help, Carr get through that Saints playbook, it was really interesting. And then
I think right now, every coach is an option, right? Like right now, it's like, oh, what about Ben Johnson? What about Mike Vrabel? What about Cliff Kingsbury? What about blank? What about blank? But like, you're one or two of those coaches going somewhere else away from looking around like, damn, there's really no one. Like, when Ben Johnson goes to Chicago, and let's say Vrabel goes to the Jets, or Vrabel goes to Jacksonville and Rex Ryan goes to the Jets, and all of a sudden you're looking around like, well, now it's Aaron Glenn, Matt Nagy, and then who? Like who? So if you look at it that way, Gruden probably is three or four as far as like just overall candidates, just overall football IQ and football whatever out there. So yeah, if the Saints end up with him, would not be a bad hire.
When Pete Carmichael inevitably was fired,
God,
there were reports out there that Jon Gruden, he could have gotten the offensive coordinator job.
Apparently, he was basically offered it.
Obviously, he chose not to take it at that time.
Yeah.
So there are ties to the Saints. Obviously, Derek Carr and Jon Gruden, they always had a great relationship. I think, Carr got a lot better when he was with Gruden. There's some good years for Derek Carr under Jon Gruden.
Yeah.
I think that this is an offense that could use that help. The defense is graded pretty poorly per PFF this season. I think that's
they've been absolutely horrible.
Just through and through, the team as a whole has brought down the defense grading.
No, I think the defense has brought down the team. The defense has been. Sean Tucker had 150 yards. I mean, the team. Amir Abdullah had 120 yards. The defense has let down the team, not vice versa.
Because the offense has been so anemic as well. I think this is defense that has a whole lot of really great pieces on it.
They do, but they suck. They do have good pieces, good name value, and good players that we thought were good, but they've been absolutely terrible. So I am 100% against this bailout idea for the defense that, well, the defense isn't that bad. The offense has just been bad. That's why. No. The defense has been bad. You're not a good defense, and the offense just kind of let you down when you go give up 120 yards to Amir Abdullah, when you go give up 140 yards or whatever it was to Sean Tucker, when you give up 100 yards to every single person that was carrying the football in Green Bay. Look, I'm not saying the offense is great, but this defense has there should not be a single excuse for this defense.
Very talented defense. If the injuries and everything were taken out of it, I think this is a top-tier defense in the NFL, as it has been in years past.
That is crazy as hell. This, I mean, you're talking about a team, a defense that is 32 the worst defense in the NFL, the worst run defense in the NFL. They are not a couple of injuries away from being a top-tier defense. That is not the case.
I think the offense, that's something that really needs the boost. And like you said, Jon Gruden's that guy. Jon Gruden can come in here.
Now, you could say the opposite. You could say the offense is like, well, they had some injuries. If the injuries weren't there, maybe they're a middle-of-the-road offense because of what we saw in the first two games. Obviously, that's not what they would be all year. But if they, fell a little bit away from those two games and fell closer to the median without the injuries, yeah, they probably are like a mid-tier, above-average offense. The defense, cannot say that. The defense is bad. They proved they were bad. There's something rotten going on.
Here, turn things up to the 11, really get things pumping for this offense, and really help turn this Saints team around. I like the fit. I like the connection to the team. I think we talked about a while ago is that Mickey Loomis, what he wants is somebody with a connection to this Saints team. Obviously, we saw, the connection through OTAs, through the offer of potentially him being the OC, through Derek Carr. Jon Gruden has ties to this Saints organization as well. So, all in all, I don't think it's that far off. I think it's something that is really possible, and I think it's something that it makes sense. There's a lot of good that could come from Jon Gruden being the next coach of the Saints.
Yeah, one final point to end on here. You're talking about the Saints salary cap situation, which isn't great. If the Saints decide to absorb Derek Carr and just say, we're just going to ride with Derek Carr, whether that's the best move or not, pairing him with the Jon Gruden makes sense because, like you said, Gruden brought out the best in Derek Carr, and Derek Carr over the next two seasons, he'll cost in terms of cap allocation, $51 million in 2025 and $61 million in 2026. That's big numbers.
That's insane. Like, that's my whole thing is that you're not going to pay Derek Carr $60 million when he's 36 years old. Like, that just doesn't seem like something's going to happen. So then if that's not going to happen, does it make sense to bring in Gruden? Unless Gruden's just like, yeah, hey, look, I mean, it is what it is. Like, I'm okay with not having Carr. If that's the situation, then fine. But like my whole thing with the optics is if you bring in Gruden and you keep Carr, then as a fan, would you be like, oh, more help for Derek Carr? Jesus, we're bringing in another one of Derek Carr's friends. Like, would that be the feeling? Because I have a sneaky feeling that would be. I have a sneaky feeling most fans would be like, damn, are we just completely centered around Derek Carr as a franchise? Like, can we do something else besides find Raider retreads and Derek Carr buds? Like everything seems to be connected, so that would be my question, and that would be my concern. Again, if the plan is you bring in Gruden, get rid of Carr, restructure, rebuild, Gruden's at the helm of that, okay, that's a whole different story. But I would have some real hesitation about Jon Gruden and Derek Carr, basically being like the Legion of Doom for the next 2 years while we're paying Derek Carr $50 million to $61 million. That's kind of crazy. So I like it in a lot of ways. I don't like it in a lot of other ways. If some of it got worked out, I'd be okay with it. Like I said, compared to some of the other coaching candidates out there, Gruden's not the worst. The situation, I would have more questions about the actual situation than I would about Gruden. I would have way more concern about, okay, well, what does this mean about the roster? What does this mean about the cap? What does this mean about Carr and all of that? So I would have some questions there. If all that was solved and it was just like Gruden as a coach, Gruden as a guy to lead this, this rebuild, then I could absolutely lean into that.
For a guy with Derek Carr's pedigree, if you're going to have that on your roster, you need to have a coach that knows how to work with them. Gruden's the guy to do it. It just makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. I wouldn't be surprised if Tom Pelissero ends up looking right here and the Saints end up hiring Jon Gruden.
What a song. What a little tune. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Where are you at on this? Like, do you like Gruden as a coach? Would you be concerned? Like, it's like more of the same, more of Raider retreads, or more of Derek Carr's phone contact list, just going down his contact list, trying to find people, or what do you think? Or is it a great hire? Would you love it? Let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.